Welcome to the August Board of Trustees meeting. And welcome to everybody. And the first item on our agenda is a presentation from the library staff members about sidewalk service.
And Chair Moreau, I'll first do a verbal roll call, please.
Oh, we have to do the roll call, right? Sorry.
Thank you. Trustee Joshi.
I'm here.
Trustee Petty.
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Here.
And Chair Moreau.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can move on to the first item on the agenda, which is our presentation.
So traditionally, we've had in board meetings, we started off with a presentation from staff so that staff can just share a little bit about a special project they're working on or activity that they're doing. And actually, it was a volunteer who suggested we invite Sean and Carl just to tell you a little bit about what their experience is like working at Sidewalk Service and maybe contrast it with their experience having worked at the desk previously. So it's totally unscripted, and this is just going to be candid, and we'll just take a few minutes. So Sean or Carl, who would like to go first?
Carly, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So we've been, as you guys probably know, doing the sidewalk pickup for the last couple months. And so we are getting a pretty nice flow of customers, oftentimes through the days. Sean, I'm sure, will attest. We basically have back-to-back customers with no breaks in the action for a full hour at a time. So we're glad that people are making use of the service. It definitely is very different than what we used to do back at the desk. Since, of course, previously, a lot of the work in terms of checking out items to customers was unloaded onto the self-check machines, or the fact that we could have multiple stations available at the same time at the library help desk. You know, we have 4 computers at the library help desk as opposed to a single workstation for the sidewalk pickup, which is a big bottleneck in terms of getting people through in a reasonable fashion. And of course, the fact that all we're doing is pickup. You know, we're not helping people with, you know, basic reference stuff like reader's advisory, finding items that they want to check out. We're just getting things for people and checking them out. But I'm glad we're able to at least have that service available. And I think the customers are very grateful for that too.
And to speak what Carl mentioned in the beginning, it is busy. There's times where, you know, we have fans on because it gets warmer running around, and early in the week we definitely have lines, which is great. And just from talking with the library patrons who have been using it, you know, a lot of them spend a lot of time saying how grateful they are that our service is available. They love to mention how efficient it is. It is set up very well. So, like a lot of us, we all visit different libraries throughout the county, and I've heard that, you know, they love coming to our branch because it's efficient, it's quick, it's easy, it's, you know, it's simple. And so they're definitely love that, you know, even from patrons who aren't, you know, up to speed with technology, they find scanning their card easy, and, you know, reserving books and having the librarian to help reserve books for them. They're really very grateful. I spoke with one lady today, and her comment kind of stuck with me. She said that there's nothing good on TV. Without you, I would be so bored. I am so grateful for you guys being here. And so that was kind of, I don't know, it just stuck with me. And, you know, just how it's set up is working very well. You know, I know there's times where we see 50 people in an hour, and so that's moving pretty quickly. And overall, it's going very well, and I think people are really enjoying it compared to how it used to be. Like Carl mentioned, you know, there's some limitations, but I think that one thing I think people do miss is just the human interaction, which, of course, you know, that's something that we all deal with. So that, and I think people sometimes do miss browsing just the shelves. But I think that our patrons, especially the regulars, are getting very comfortable with our online catalog system, where they kind of feel like they're browsing the shelves a little bit, just without the covers. And so, but I think that's the one thing, if I had to say that I've heard multiple times, is they just miss being in the library. But overall, I think it's a success. It's moving well. I think it was organized and very efficiently. And I think it's, we've noticed that we're checking out a lot of materials, and especially with kids not being at school, I've heard a couple of times a lot of parents saying, "Oh, thank you, you have saved me," because they've checked out, 30 children's books to keep the kids busy. So that kind of shows our impact on not only just getting books out, but we're helping people who their kids are at home now instead of at school.
That's great. Did trustees have questions for Sean and Carl?
I had one. I'm not sure if it's for Sean or Carl or Inga, but how much of a technology change did you have to do to set up the curbside checkout? I mean, was it just a matter of moving the wand and the table outside, or was there a whole lot of reconfiguration that had to be done?
So we definitely did have to do some heavy logistics to get things set up in a way that would work well. The way it's set up right now, we have the lobby of the library essentially divided into two. So there's the one side of the library that's for returns, and so thankfully we already had the holiday return slot in the wall there. So things coming through there, we have that area sectioned off so that the items that are coming back in don't come in contact with items that are going out, to make sure that things aren't contaminated. So we have a separate computer workstation with a separate scanner and everything for incoming items. And then in between, we either swap gloves or sanitize to make sure that we're keeping everything clean going out the other way. And so yeah, so we're lucky that we had the stuff on hand. I know David had to sort of cannibalize some parts from various locations to be able to put the workstations together. Like he took a couple of standing desks that had been in other places and had to reconfigure those in the lobby, and had to figure out how to get tables and things set up properly to have the best workflow and be able to just move around in the lobby while we're doing things.
Mm-hmm. And the scanners were kind of moved from the main desk, the ones that the librarians had before, for people. Okay, and moved them out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, so the main computer, like for checkout, has two scanners hooked up to it: the one that the customers access and one that the staff use.
Let's see. Jim had a question.
I think Bob was first.
Oh, sorry. Bob had a question, and you're muted, Bob. To unmute on the bar on the bottom.
Yeah, it was the bar I was trying to get rid of. Okay. Is it still the case that after a book is returned, you're quarantining it for 72 hours before making it available for checkout again?
Yeah,
Right.
The quarantine's actually gone up to 96 hours.
Yeah, it's the national study that's been done recommends 4 days of quarantine.
That's interesting to me, because everything else I've read about the possibility of transferring the virus on paper or books or your mail or a newspaper has been that it's almost completely unlikely. And, which would, like, I knew people in the beginning that would take their mail every day wearing gloves and put it in the garage for 3 days before they'd open it up. And, now I wasn't aware that anything like that was going on. And so I was wondering, I guess, why that recommendation is still there for library books.
So there was a national study by OCLC and then a leading scientific lab and a federal library group, and we can send you the link to that. I think that what they found was that the virus doesn't last as long on paper, for sure, but on hard plastic surfaces, it lasts longer.
Yeah. Jim.
Yeah, I just was, wanted to hear a little bit more about how the perceptions of safety from the exposure, both from the staff and also from the patrons that you run into. Do they seem to be comfortable with the way we're doing this, or do you hear concerns about how we're doing it? And how do you feel about it as well?
So as for me, I feel 100% safe. We now have plexiglass on one of the doors, so that was an extra precaution. Plus, I believe the table is, I think, 5 feet long, or maybe. So there's a distance. Plus, we have the plexiglass for staff and for our patrons. And we have gotten questions from patrons who have been concerned about what is our safety procedures, and we definitely let them know that all the books that come in, we quarantine for 4 days, and then they become available. And then also, we have gloves, we have sanitizer everywhere. We have a table outside that has the hand sanitizer and Clorox. And so I think they feel safe because we're doing a lot of limited interaction and contact. So I haven't heard any concerns about safety. No one's ever mentioned anything.
Great.
Oh, question.
Harish, yes, why don't you ask your
Yes.
question?
Okay. Once, right now the weather is good and you can do this outside service, the other plans for if it starts to rain or something, when that happens, gets windy, etc. What are the plans for them?
So definitely the new plexiglass that we've installed, which is an insert into one of the doorways, is going to help in inclement weather from the staff side of things. And then we have been opening 2 doors, one primarily for air circulation, and so that will be closed. So with a closed door and a plexiglass, we won't have to worry so much about water blowing in. From the public side, however, there is a little bit of covering where the person stands when they're checking out an item, but we might have to provide a canopy on the sidewalk for people who are queuing up for the service. And I should say we have 2 of those canopies that say Monterey Public Library on them that the Friends purchased for us for taking to outdoor events a few years ago.
Good.
Oh, Marcia, I think Marcia is muted.
Any other questions?
Just a quick comment, if I could, wanted to, if that's all right with you, Marcia.
Sure.
Yeah, just wanted to thank Sean and Carl and the entire team. Inga, I know, has worked tremendously hard to make the library curbside pickup service happen. We were the first. They were the first to open up curbside service in the entire county after the pandemic, and other libraries followed. So they showed tremendous leadership and resiliency through making this happen. Even with, last week we had really bad smoky days, worse than what we saw this morning. And in order to prevent smoke from going into the library and to protect our employees, but still provide the service, Inga worked with the team, and her husband helped build the plexiglass system as well that allowed for the library to be able to provide that service to the public while keeping our employees and staff safe. So kudos really to the entire team. And I know it's not an exaggeration when Carl says there's a lot of people outside. I see the lines, and I think yesterday, or I think was it yesterday, Tuesday actually, there were at some points 15 people in line waiting for books. So very, very popular service.
Thank you, Nat. I was answering the phone today because Kim Smith is off, and one of the customers told me that when the library's closed, when our library closed, she felt like she'd been put in prison because she walks to the library every day. And another customer, it was so sweet, you could hear her elderly dad talking in the background, and she was getting him large print books, and she commented that, I can remember when he brought me to your library for story time, and now here I am helping him get books. So it really is an important community service, and I'm really proud of the team that we're able to continue it in these unusual circumstances.
Yes, and thanks both of you for a very nice presentation, and thank you for what you do every single day, and thank you in advance for continuing to do what you're doing for everybody. We all appreciate it. Myself included. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing us to speak.
Yes. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but of course, you don't have to if you've got other stuff you want to pop off and do. But thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's nice seeing you all, and have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed. Yeah. Thanks for this opportunity, and hope you guys have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, and now we move on to the consent agenda, which contains just one item today, which is the approval of the minutes on July 23rd. 2020. Do we have any addendum that says additions, corrections, additions, subtractions? Anything? We okay with the minute?
Yes.
Okay.
Hearing none, I'd move for approval of the consent calendar involving the minutes.
I'll second that.
Second, okay. We need a roll call vote on that, I guess?
Yes, please. Thank you. Trustee Joshi,
Aye.
Trustee Petty,
I think you're muted, Bob.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Chair Moreau.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of our consent agenda, and now we move on to public comments.
Yes. So for viewers, we encourage members of the public to watch this broadcast on YouTube Live, which has a short delay of approximately 10 seconds. You can watch at youtube.com/City of Monterey. To make a public comment, when viewers watching live on YouTube or Channel 25 see the announcement on your screen, please dial 831-582-6500. Press *5 to raise your hand and to be placed in the queue to speak. Callers will be automatically muted until it is your turn to speak. We ask that you please turn off any background noise or move to a different room if necessary. You can please dial 831-582-6500. And Chair Moreau, there are no callers.
Okay, thank you. So hearing none, we move on to the next, to the section of old business. And our next item on the agenda is a report from the Ad Hoc Planning Committee, which consists of Bob, myself, and Inga. And Bob is going to start us off.
Okay. As the agenda indicates, we have had a number of meetings, this committee of ours, and I think they have been very productive in terms of beginning a focus on what we need to be looking toward in the future, and making some assumptions as to aspects of what the future will look like that would determine what we can and wish to plan for. Number one probably being the fact that the even if the virus were to disappear from the face of the earth before we finish our meeting today, the city's financial crisis would not. And we need to expect that the funds available from the city are not going to return to what we had been used to in the past anytime soon. And so, assuming maybe that the amount that the city set aside for the library for the current fiscal year is something on which we could base future planning. We've been talking about, well, certainly that means we will be able to afford fewer staff. And there makes no sense to come up with a lot of great ideas for programs and services if you don't have the staff to provide them. So one factor that we are keeping in mind, and all of this, it's called a planning committee. So all of this is future looking, not something about which we have made any firm, concrete decisions to bring to the board right now. But certainly one thing that we will keep in mind is our expectation for available funding for staff, because that would have a bearing on what kinds of programs and services we could offer. Assuming that at least the city's allocation of funding for the library remains lower than it has been historically due to the city's overall financial situation. That has led us to say, well, we need to be working on the development and innovation of more remote programs, ones that we can offer in greater quantity than we did before, because probably we will be able to offer in-person activities in a smaller quantity. And so one will make up for the other. A second reason for looking to remote operations in the future, more so than we have in the past, is because if there's anything good that has come out of this situation, such as what we're doing now, not having an in-person meeting, but having to do it remotely, is the finding, and this goes across many sectors, not just city government, but my meetings with the State Commission on Aging. I've talked to people who are working from home, people who are still having business meetings and everything, but so much more is now being done using this format rather than in person. And people are noting the benefits of doing a lot of things that way, rather than saying, oh, it's a poor substitute for in person. In some respects, it can actually be used to our advantage. And so that's another guiding principle, I think, that the planning committee will be keeping in mind for what we want to do in the future. Inga shared the final results of almost 600 people responded to the survey that we did and provided a lot of very important information. That survey and all of its data has been shared. It's either part of the packet or it's been sent to the board. And I would just like to highlight a few of the things from that would have bearing on what the planning committee does and the board does in the future from my own perspective. And then I'll let Marcia and Inga supplement or complement with an EM, not IM, anything that I have said. First off, what do our patrons want? And the three sort of top vote getters, no matter where the funding comes from to provide them, the three things that were tops on the list were our collection of books and reading materials. Secondly, the assistance and knowledge that the staff provide. And thirdly, the DVD CD collection. I found that particularly interesting because it suggests that as people are forced to stay home more, maybe they're, looking to our DVD and CD collection more in the past. We don't have comparable data, at least I don't at the tip of my tongue, but those were the top three. In terms of programs, those of you who have heard me talk at the board meetings for months and months and months, I have pointed out the increase in interest from the adult population in the programs that we have been providing. And sure enough, in terms of programs, adult programs were noted by respondents to this survey as much as children and teen programs put together. The percentages were 28, 20, and 8% noted the teen program. So if you add the programs for youth of all ages, it just matches what the adults noted in their responses. So I think probably that should give us some guidance for what we look toward doing. There was an interesting question about providing a computer lab, because we think about technology and computers and all of that, and it was a huge number of people responding negatively to wanting that as a primary thing for us to offer. So not that I think we should move away from offering that service, but clearly that's something that has to be done in-house, and many of these things that we're talking about aren't going to happen soon, because we don't expect to get permission all the way up to Sacramento to even open up the library soon. And the three of us on this committee have been saying to ourselves, and looking at the very fine planned opening document that Inga came up with 2-3 months ago, and the different phases, and we've already done one modification to it, going from 1 to 1.5 instead of 1 to phase 2, but that there may not even be a phase 2. It could be that the whole library system statewide will go from what we're doing now, sidewalk service, to an opening, skipping the we'll let them in, but they can't do much of anything phase. And so on the one hand, that's discouraging, but on the other hand, it gives us time to plan for how we want inside stuff to look maybe differently from what it was before we had to close down. And certainly that would include any reference to a computer lab. There was a question on the survey of how our patrons, the almost 600 of whom responded, would like us to use any donations that come our way through the Friends and Foundation and then spent via the trust fund, and new circulation items, items to be circulated, and purchasing of online book services were the top two of interest in that. So I think that is certainly something that will guide our planning as we go forward. The one other thing that I want to mention, two other things. One, of the large number of respondents, 72% of them were from the Monterey and Pacific Grove geographic areas, which, since we have been joined at the hip with the PG library for a long time, makes a lot of sense that Monterey and Pacific Grove would be the ones that would respond to this survey, and that's exactly what happened. So we just, that's just sort of demographic information that would be of value. Next to the lastly, there was a question about, well, if you ever get to reopen, when are the best days? When would you prefer? If we can't have 7-day a week, what would your top days be? And of the 7 days of the week, Saturday was number 1, and Sunday was last, number 7, which, it tells us right away that people like to have the library open at least once on the weekend, but twice may be more than we need. And then of the other 5 days of the week, Thursday was lowest choice. I don't know if there's any reason that we have to be open 5 consecutive and closed 2 consecutive, or if we determine that open 5 days a week would be worth trying once we get to that stage in our phases, then maybe having Sunday through Wednesday. I'm sorry, Monday through Wednesday, skip Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday, based on these responses right here. But the other 5 days, besides those 2 low ones, were pretty much the same after Saturday. So that's a clear picture. And finally, the age of the respondents to this survey, by far, mostly adults. And of the adult population, the 55 to 75 age group was the largest number, then 35 to 55%. And so, again, that speaks toward the strong interest in what the library provides from the adults. I bet that a lot of those adults who responded to this, based on some of the anecdotes that Inga shared earlier this afternoon, they were maybe responding on behalf of their kids. And even though it was an adult, answering the survey questions, they may have been adding to the data for continuing the kids program. So anyhow, that's what I would say right now, that we're looking forward to some innovative, some new things, some new ways of doing things, partly because it's the right thing to do and will keep us being a superior library, and partly because our resources will likely be limited, at least for the near future, and we have to, work with what we have. I think the support from the Friends and Foundation and through them from the public will be crucial in our being able to develop new things and maintain the best of what we have been doing. So that's my overview of what I see the Planning Committee has been up to, and I'll let Marcia and Inga fill in anything that I've either lied about or forgotten.
I just wanted to put a little caveat on the survey, and that is that the people who didn't answer the survey, whose voices were probably not heard in the survey. One is people who don't have strong internet access or much internet access. It was an online survey, so people who don't participate that way are not heard on this. And then the other one, of course, is children, I think, or teenagers, because their voices probably weren't heard. So I think as we plan, we have to look at those populations as well, even though they didn't respond. There are people who, for example, who come into the library to use computers because that's all, that's the only place they're going to get them. And they're not reflected in the survey. So we got that in mind. We know that this is a sort of self-selecting sample, and it always is when you put something like this online. Inga, you want to add?
Sure. So on packet page 11, we made a list of the strategic priorities and sort of the core services for the library. And Bob mentioned staffing. I just wanted to say a little bit about technology. One of the things that the Planning Committee will be looking at are there ways that we can use technology to supplement what we do to be more efficient and more effective? And so one of the things, for instance, is the possibility of installing RFID, which is something that a number of libraries in our area have done, which would make circulation of materials more efficient and less staff intensive. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at. And of course, later on, we'll be talking about our facility a little bit more, but are there ways that we can use our facility more efficiently? So I think as we move forward, the Planning Committee, we are going to be looking at how to be efficient, how to be effective, and then how to be as responsive as possible to our community.
Okay. Any questions or comments about any of these? Yes, Jim.
I just had a comment is I appreciate the mentioning the focus in the future on enhanced use of technology. And I know that's in some respects probably hard to do now with the lack of staff and also funding difficulties. But on the other hand, it is an opportunity, particularly for something like RFID, where it's hard to do it if people are in your stacks. And while the library is closed, there may be some opportunities for some efficiencies in some of those sorts of things. So I was very pleased to see the emphasis on that, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Go forward and continue to do good things with this committee. And let's move forward to the next item, which is the proposed changes to the amendment of the fiscal year 2021 library trust fund budget.
Right.
Should we take a public comment on the last item before we go to the next?
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So for any members of the public that are watching, we do encourage you to watch this broadcast on YouTube Live, which has a short delay of approximately 10 seconds. You can watch at youtube.com/City of Monterey. To make a public comment, when you see on your screen the announcement, please dial 831-582-6500. Press *5 to raise your hand, and you will be added to the queue to speak. Callers will be automatically muted until it is your turn to speak. Please turn off any background noise or move to a different room if necessary. Again, that phone number is 831-582-6500. And Chair Moreau, there are no callers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Inga, so you want to take item 4?
Sure. So these are proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2021 trust fund budget. So just to remind you and anyone in our audience, we're in a 2-year budget cycle. And so back in 2019, we estimated what our trust fund budget would be for this fiscal year. So because there are so many unknowns, we didn't populate very much in that estimated budget. Then back in May, you allocated some new funds that we'd received to that budget. So you made an initial amendment. And then because there were so many issues about the general fund budget that needed to be worked out with City Council, City Council didn't take any action on the trust fund budget for the library. So at this point, we've been operating with that estimated budget that that the council had adopted 2 years ago. So now that we have been in this lockdown situation for a few months, it's clear that what we really need to be focusing on is more virtual programming and less allocation towards physical things, such as supplies for programs and so forth. So I've changed what you had approved back in May and have some new recommendations. And then City Council will be looking at special funds budgets in September. So we think that this will be adopted in September. And then, of course, throughout the year, as funds come in, we amend we ask that the council appropriate funds as we receive them. So it's not that this will be final for the next 12 months, but this is would be our starting point. So I put in your packet pages 14 and 15 as a spreadsheet that shows what you had proposed as the amendments back in May, and then I've made revisions for you to consider proposing in August. And the main change is, so first of all, there's a correction. Remember last month you approved some funds that the Friends had allocated towards fund development. You approved that we would ask council to appropriate those funds towards the fund development position. And I neglected to add those funds to this document. So that was $12,169. And so if you look at packet page 14, up at the top under fund development, PTS, salaries, benefits, you'll see that the figure that's printed for you is $31,572. That doesn't take into consideration the $12,169 that we received from the Friends to go towards fund development staffing. And that basically was to give us an additional 13 hours a week of Mary Jane's time for fund development, so that we'd have a total of 23 hours a week. And that would take us through the middle of January. And so then that changes the bottom line, which is on packet page 15, from 173,688 to 185,857. So I wanted to highlight a couple of other things, which is if you were to approve these allocations. So what were these funds that we have, that we've received, that we have to allocate? We received money for summer reading. That was a $30,000 gift. We didn't expend all of that money. And then we also received, and the donor has said use them, as you see fit, towards the most important things that you need to address. And then the second thing is we received from MC Gives, we received funds for 12 months of programming for children and teens. So the way that I've allocated that is, if you take it from the top of packet page 14 and move down, you'll see under California History Room, we now have $19,057 under PTS salaries, and that would give us up to 14 hours a week of a reference/history PTS librarian. And that would be to help us with our phone service, and also to help us with, we have quite a backlog of reference questions and California History Room questions that have come in that between Kim and I, we're just not able to keep up with them. And so that would help with that. And also it would help, since that's one thing that's unique about us, is that we have such a rich California History Room, that would help make that service available. And then down under reference services, you'll see that there's $19,750, and that would give us, and that's taking money from MC Gives and also the some leftover from summer reading, and that would give us up to 14.5 hours of teen librarian service. And then moving down below that under youth services, 26,250 would give us 20 hours a week of a youth services librarian PTS, so that we could do virtual programming for children, for teens, and for adults.
Can I ask a question about the reference history PTS librarian?
Sure.
That is someone with expertise in California history, so it can't be just somebody at general library experience. because they've got to be able to answer questions about the California History Room.
Right. So I would say any of our reference librarians can assist with California History Room questions, but ideally we would have one of the people that specializes in that area help with those questions.
Okay.
And again, this gives us a collection of hours. It doesn't give us a position.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Jim, and you're muted.
Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it. One question and one clarification, starting with the clarification on the packet page 15 at the bottom, it shows total 101 general fund. And as I understand it, that's actually a typo and that should be for the trust fund. I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear about that because I was kind of confused the first time I saw that.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, and I meant to point that out, and I'm sorry I didn't. But right, so this is the trust fund budget. It's not the general fund budget.
Good. Thank you for the clarification. And then the second question I had was under the fund development / acquisition / building at kind of the very first grouping under library admin. It shows 26,700 for library materials. And if I recall correctly, the money in the general fund was zeroed out and for this coming fiscal year, and therefore this is the only money available for library acquisition of materials. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that includes not only print materials and DVDs and audiobooks and so forth, but any electronic resources as well.
Okay, thank you. That's the only questions I had.
One more question about the collections. So if there's someone on board to catalog these collections as they come in already,
right.
You don't need additional cataloging for these collections.
Correct. So we have up to 20 hours a week of part-time work from in the budget. And so right now we have Meg Morris doing cataloging for us.
Okay. And so she could pick this up if another $26,000.
Yes.
Bob, and you're muted.
Or not. There we go. So I would just want to operationalize the point that Jim brought up, that all of this funding, whether we shuffle the money from one box to another or one column to another, none of this money is part of that $1 million plus in the general fund that the city council allocated for us. And all of this is as a result of donations and grants that are going through Friends and Foundation, and then ultimately per our allocations of it, the trust fund. And that as it says in the either the Article 7 or the library board policy about using the trust fund, that spending this money doesn't change the amount of money from the general fund that is available as it has been designated to be available. So and I guess the other thing I would point out, besides being totally in favor of what you've proposed here, two things. One, just as we're changing this today, if something comes up, it can be changed again. Amendments can happen any old time. And secondly, that we're going to do a very precise job in following the guidelines and stipulations that are in the Article 7 of the city charter and in the board policy as far as use of the trust fund goes. So with that, and Harish hasn't spoken yet, but I was going to move that we accept or approve the amendments to the trust fund as presented here, with the corrections that you made along the way.
Bob, you asked the very question I had, so that's why I didn't need to ask.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Jim?
I think prior to taking action on the motion, probably should ask for public comment.
No, you make a motion and then ask the public to comment on the motion.
I think you can do it either way.
Okay, so Francesca, you want to ask for public comment?
Sure, yes. So for members of the public that are watching, we do encourage you to follow along on youtube.com/City of Monterey. You may dial the number 831-582-6500. Press *5 to raise your hand, and you will be added to the queue to speak. Callers will be automatically muted until it is your turn to speak. We do ask that you please turn off any background noise or move to a different room if necessary. Again, that phone number is 831-582-6500. And Chair Moreau, there are no callers.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you.
And does the motion include the correction that I mentioned of including the 12,169?
Yes.
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 Bob, you're muted.
You're muted, Bob. We can't hear you.
That money was already there, it just failed to make the printed copy.
Correct, yes.
Okay, before we vote, I just had a clarification, just a clarification question, and that is, what happens now? This goes directly to City Council for their approval?
So the City Finance Director has asked all the department heads to submit all of their adjustments to the special funds budgets. And so it will be compiled into one big staff report that then goes to City Council at the second meeting in September for adoption by City Council.
Okay, thank you. Are we, any other comments, or are we ready for a vote? Guess we're ready for a vote. Francesca, you want to call the...
Trustee Doshi.
I approve.
Trustee Petty. I see you saying aye, even though you're, okay. Can this? Vice Chair Thompson
Aye.
and Chair Moreau.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. So we move on to the next item, which is the potential one-time transfer of the Community Foundation Endowment Fund 2020 earnings to the Library Trust Fund. If you recall, this is an item that we discussed in light of a committee report last week, one of the three financial alternatives, and we decided to hold off on it for a little while. And Inga, do you want to comment on this one?
Sure. So essentially, I'm not making a recommendation at this time, but I just wanted to let you know that we have until the end, or you have until the end of the year. So that's what I learned from Brian Thayer at the Community Foundation from Monterey County, that the decision doesn't need to be made until the end of the year.
And you may recall that when we discussed this last time, the question came up, perhaps we shouldn't be allocating the money unless we really need the money, and we have a specific earmarked purpose for the money, since it's in the endowment, and we were hoping to build up the endowment. So this gives us a few months to make that decision and decide whether or not we really do need the money, and until then, it's still in the endowment. So Jim and then Bob.
Yeah, given that, I'd be comfortable either tabling this item or continuing it to, or directing staff to bring it back maybe at our October meeting or something like that. I mean, I'm comfortable not addressing the item right now.
Bob, you're muted.
I just wanted to clarify the, first off, I agree with what Jim just said. Secondly, you said that, Inga, you said that the foundation told us we have until the end of the calendar year to make this request. Does that also mean that after the end of the year, we've lost our chance? And that's why we couldn't ask for the similar amount from 2019, because it's already past the end of that calendar year.
Correct. That's correct.
So we not only have a few months, but we need to use those few months if we want to. I mean, do it. We can't put it off beyond that.
Right.
Correct.
I think we could do it at the December meeting, which is in early December, I assume, because this is the end of December, not the 1st of December, right? So it's the end of December. So we do
That's
have-
right. So one thing I
Yeah,
would,
so I think we should make sure then that we, maybe in our planning committee or somehow we think about it and have something that would lead us to make this decision at that, was it December 3rd or whatever that first week of December meeting is?
Or before, if we need the money. Before, if we need the money. Harish,
Yes, so then by November, would we have a better picture? Is that what you're saying?
well, that we hope so. We hope so.
Okay.
It'll be clearer than it is now, I assume, whether we need the money or not. So I don't think we have to vote on it. We can just table it until December, correct? Any other comments on this item?
I think what we want to do is I don't think we want to formally table it, but just know that, we'll bring it back.
Right.
For future. There's the potential we'll bring it back.
Okay. All right. Okay, moving on. We are now ready to receive the report from the Ad Hoc Feasibility Study Committee and consider approval of the Monterey Public Library Feasibility Study. So let's see. Jim, do you want to say anything about it? Inga, do you want to say anything about it?
I'll let Inga start and then Bob and I can chime in.
Okay.
Okay, well, in the packet, I gave a background about how we got to this point where we have this study. And so just to remind you, we have a building that's about 70 years old. It's had a lot of heavy use. And back in, I don't think I put this in the background, but back in, I believe it was 95 or so, the library board said we need to look at making improvements to the building and potential expansion. And then it kept being tabled as a topic because of financial issues, but there was a master plan that was adopted in 2001 that called for expansion in our current location. And so we thought a couple of years ago, it's time to look at this again, because obviously we have a facility that's aging, and from a study that was done in 2007, there was about $3.5 million worth of improvements that were needed. Some of those improvements were made, others have not been acted upon yet. So anyway, so we obtained some money to do a study, and then, of course, not anticipating COVID-19 or not anticipating that other financial issues that would that the city would fall prey of. So anyway, so we've sort of postponed the final adoption of this study, even though all of the work by the consultants has been done. We did, they helped us do a great job getting a lot of community input. We had a community group that weighed in on all these different options, and the board looked at many different options for expansion or improvements to the building. And so the report before you is the result of all that work, and could have seen it in November or so of last year, but it's been postponed until now. So that's what I have to say, but Jim and Bob, who are on the committee, might have further comments.
Do you want to start, Bob, or shall I? I didn't hear you, but I'm assuming that means I should.
It meant I was trying to find the red button to unmute myself. But go right ahead. I mean, you know, when I get nasty notes from the assistant city manager that I'm creating echoes and feedback, I just keep that red light on as long as I can. So it's all yours. It's all yours.
It was a very friendly note.
A very friendly note. Good. Well, I'll make mine fairly brief. I just wanted to highlight that the recommendations that the board made back in, I believe it was back in August of last year, that are summarized in the executive summary on page 5 and in a little more detail later on in the report, indicate that the recommendations vary in potential cost from a low of 12 million to a high of maybe 37 million, and there are other alternatives that could go as high as 50 million. So some people might wonder, you know, when we're considering this and when we're suggesting taking it to the city council, given the fiscal crisis that we in, are we out of our minds? And you know, that's perhaps debatable in any case, but I think there is a logic to dealing with this now before it gets stale, number one, because we spent most of last year on this. But number two, I know at the city council level, when they talked about the transient occupancy tax vote, there was some discussion that if that passes, some of the council members would like to think about perhaps, I don't know, earmarking is perhaps too strong a word, but anyway, considering some of that money perhaps being used for capital improvements in the future. And I think it's important that we provide some alternatives and some suggestions for citywide long-term and medium-term capital improvement planning. So in that sense, I think this is very timely, even though it may seem a bit crazed to be bringing things with these kind of numbers before the city council. I think in terms of long-range planning, it does make sense. So I still think it's reasonable to move forward with this, but I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that it may seem a little strange to some people that we're talking about such things right now. So that's all my comments.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that in no way is this going to be presented as a plan for the near future, that as it would have been maybe 6, 8, 10 months ago. And, you know, the recommendations that are highlighted in this report and the suggestions for what development should take place are all based without knowledge of the current financial crisis in the city. But I think in terms of the spirit or in terms of the emphasis that these recommendations reflect, that can be used for future planning. And I mean, just one example that I have always liked was doing some physical building that created more multi-use space in the library. And we talked about enclosing the back patio, for example, and having it be sort of a quasi indoor outdoor, but, you know, not removable ceiling or rooftop, but, you know, changing the availability of types of use of different parts of the building. And, you know, certainly once we get to the point where we can use the interior again, which is months from now, as we said before, I think using the ideas, not so much the dollars that it would cost to go whole hog, even for the lowest possible recommendation in the report, but the ideas of what we thought were worthwhile and likely to benefit the library in the long run. And that would just be one example that I have sort of kept thinking about, because I like that idea, and what G4 told us about having done that at other places intrigued me significantly. So I think using the ideas on which the numbers are based is a point from which we will be able to start when it becomes, pardon the pun, feasible.
Okay, other comments, other questions? I just have one comment, and that is sometimes it's hard for us to look around and think that this will all be over and the world will go back not necessarily to the way it was, but at least to the way people will begin to use the library again as a place of refuge, as an indoor space, as an after-school place, as a place for children to come, all those things. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't, just as we're planning, for the near future, to plan for the long-term future. And if we wait until the long-term future is here to start planning, then it's too late. So it's a good thing, I think, to be ready for when life moves on from this time. Any other comments? No, we don't need public comment on this. No.
I would
Okay.
suggest that we do allow public comment.
Well, we need a motion on the floor before we allow public comment. Somebody want to move to approve it?
No, there's nothing to vote on, but you can open it up for public comment. We've just received the report and we have it in our hands.
Actually, it's received the report, but also approve
Please approve
the study.
Approve the study and pass it on. So I think we do need a motion, but we can ask for public comment first before we have the motion. I think that's fine.
Sure.
Shall we?
Yes. I encourage members of the public to watch this broadcast on YouTube Live. This has a short delay of approximately 10 seconds. You can watch at youtube.com/City of Monterey. To make a public comment, when viewers watching live on YouTube or Channel 25 see the announcement on your screen, please dial 831-582-6500. Press *5 to raise your hand, and you will be added to the queue to speak. Callers will be automatically muted until it is your turn to speak. We do ask that you please turn off any background noise. That number again is 831-582-6500.
Right? We good?
There are no callers. Thank you.
Okay. So now I'll entertain a motion to approve this study.
I would be happy to move that the board receive the report from the Ad Hoc Feasibility Study Committee and approve the Monterey Public Library feasibility study as submitted.
I'll second that.
Okay. You got a second? All right. Any other comments or thoughts or?
I was not there when the study was done, but I've looked at it and it does look good.
Great. Thank you. Okay, shall we have a vote?
Yes. Trustee Joshi,
Aye?
Trustee Petty,
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson,
Aye.
Chair Moreau.
Aye,
Thank you.
it's unanimous. We move it forward. Thank you. Well done, committee. Thank you to the committee for all your hard work, and it's nice to see the whole package conclude after all this time. Moving forward. Okay, we move on to the informational reports, and the next one is the statistical report.
Okay, so I thought trustees would be interested in seeing these numbers that show how popular sidewalk service has been. And thanks to Nat Rojana-Sathira, who put this into a Google dashboard for us. And you can see that from 52 days of service, we've circulated almost 22,000 items and served over 7,000 customers. And you also see a breakdown by age of the customers using the service. And then the last 2 pages of the report, it also shows how electronic materials usage has gone up, which we would all expect given our current situation with people not being able to come in and use the library and browse the collections and so forth. But the last 2 pages of the report, I wanted to include our volunteer numbers, because we have a strong core of volunteers led by a volunteer, Judy Cole. And in the first month, which was just a few weeks, in June, they clocked in a significant number of hours. I think Judy's been putting in over 40 hours a week. And we really wouldn't be able to provide this service without the volunteers that are shelving the books. If you can imagine, all the books that are returned have to go back in their places. And then all of the items that get checked out are being physically pulled off the shelves by volunteers. So it's just a real testament to what a strong group of volunteers we have and how appreciative we are of their hard work.
Just comment, is there a way that the board can sort of formally thank these volunteers, or you go into the minutes that we publicly thank them for this, because this is a contribution that's kind of extraordinary considering the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps we
We'll
could
have to
just
think about that. Yeah.
put it in the minutes at least. Bob.
Inga, physically, where do the volunteers do their work? Where are they when they are doing this volunteer work? Is it back in the not to be seen hidden rooms of the library there?
Well, they're in the stacks. So the idea is that every single book borrowed by somebody, or DVD or audiobook, has to be pulled off the shelf, and that's the work that the volunteers are doing. And all of the thousands of items that are being returned and then quarantined, eventually the volunteers are putting them away. So the volunteers are in the teen area, in the children's area, in the adult fiction area, in the nonfiction area. And Bob
Just a
is
minute.
muted.
There we go. I would like to make 2 suggestions. Number 1, in the daily report that comes out of the city manager's office that updates the community on the services and the fire and the COVID and all that. Recently, there was a nice little segment of it that related to the library. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't compose something on behalf of the library from the board, publicly thanking those volunteers in that through that publication for all the work they're doing, and just saying, it's great to get the public support, and we're here to serve the public. And like you said, Inga, really couldn't be doing everything that we are providing without them. And if we could put that in that, I'm not sure how far and wide that goes, but that would be one start. And the other thing I was going to say is, I was asking you where they physically are when they're working. If we could, and you could forge my signature if you want, but get a big card, put it up in the stacks where all those volunteers will see it when they walk in, that thanks them on behalf of the board. So they will see that when they walk in and do their work. Those would be the 2 requests I would make, or suggestions.
So all the volunteers, there's a station which they come to take their temperature and to answer some questions and to sign in. And so that would be a great place to post something from the library board expressing your gratitude for their service.
I think those are great suggestions. Thank you.
Yeah, Inga, I'll be happy to work with you on some wording. We can.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great.
And to address Bob's comment about the community briefing emails, absolutely. We're always looking for content that's fresh and different, and recognizing the volunteers as part of those local updates we send every day would be helpful. Big shout out to Lori Mulga, who is our PIO and has prepared those each and every day. And yesterday we reached a milestone of 100 updates on COVID-19, believe it or not. And to answer the question that you had, Bob, it reaches over 2,500 email subscribers daily.
Great. Thank you. So also under staff comments, I wanted to add something which I wanted to brief you about Cannery Row Days, a novel celebration, which is a project that I've been working on with Susan Schillinglaw, who is the head of the Steinbeck Center, or was the head of the Steinbeck Center at San Jose State, and Tim Thomas, who used to be the head of the Maritime Museum. He's a maritime historian. Dennis Copeland has been volunteering, and Greg Calais, who is from Mbari and is the former president of the Cannery Row Foundation. Anyway, we've been working together on Cannery Row Days, and what we're planning for the month of September, October, and then the beginning of December, we're going to have, so Cannery Row, the novel by Steinbeck, is turning 75 this year. And so in September, we're going to have a kickoff on the 16th of September, which will be a discussion of the novel Cannery Row by 3 panelists. And then we'll have book discussions. So there'll be 3 different book discussions by Zoom that people can join in on. In the month of October, we're going to show 4 different films, and they'll be introduced. And then the shorts will take place, and then there'll be discussion. And then on November 7th will be Cannery Row Day, where we'll have readings of Cannery Row and some additional expert panelists and some virtual tours of the Pacific Biological Lab and of Cannery Row. So it's sort of envision a community read, where we're trying to get folks excited about Cannery Row and our community. And so it's going to be a great celebration, and we'll be having a press release shortly. Will be coming out.
Wonderful. Bob, you had a comment before Inga spoke, I think. Yeah.
I probably did, but I have to get rid of the red light here. Okay. I don't even remember what that was, but one thing I was thinking from what Inga just said, is there any way that we can secure, in terms of this honoring and noting everything that's happening Steinbeck-wise in the next few months? Is there any way we can get a connection on KAZU to have brief, things, just 30 seconds now and then, and, it's brought to you by Monterey Public Library, and maybe just reading 3 or 4 meaningful, memorable sentences from the famous books, and then mentioning, of course, the activities that you said they're going to be remote and virtual and all that. But if we could, as a public service, if we could grab a few seconds of their time, and to that end, if they want somebody from the library to provide any of the voice work, I'd be happy to volunteer that. I've done commercials on KEZU before for other things. So anyway, just a suggestion.
We do have some airtime for KAZU that was paid for by the Friends last year. So we do have some slots available.
Okay, I think we move on to trustee comments at this point. So we start with trustee Joshi.
Okay. About the Steinbeck thing, let's also put the publicity on our website.
Yes.
Idea. Trustee Petty, you have some comments? Comments?
Nothing more than what we have all sort of said, that this is a strange new era in the life of the Monterey Library, and being a part of how that develops and plays out in new innovative ways is going to be worth a lot of people putting in a lot of time, but I think the end result will be something quite good. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Trustee Thompson?
I just have one comment. I just wanted to thank Nat for the work he's done on these statistics, particularly on the sidewalk service. That's very helpful information, and realize it takes a certain amount of time to pull all that together. And I realize that comes from the library staff as well as Nat, but wanted to acknowledge the work he's been doing to help us in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have
I wish I could take the credit. I just set up the framework for it. David Kuhn on the library staff works with Inga over there. He's the one who enters the data and keeps it running. So
great.
Really appreciate it, Jim. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Okay. And I had 2 comments. The first one is just to let everybody know there'll be closed session meetings for the director evaluation. One is on August 31st at 3 o'clock and one is on September 17th. And there'll be a public comment period before each one of these closed sessions. And then the second comment is that I formed an ad hoc committee on, we're calling it benchmarking library services and costs. And the committee members are Jim, myself, and Inga is a member also. And we're going to be looking at comparisons of other libraries and institutions as we cost out current services and potential future services, and work with the city manager's office also. As plans come out of the Ad Hoc Planning Committee, it'll be very nice, they'll mesh very nicely, that we can kind of look at the costs and the benchmarking of some of those new services. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay. Any second? Well, okay, Bob. Bob seconded. Okay, so we are adjourned.
Okay.
Until next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all.